Hey everybody, I'm Matt Carmichael, editor of What the Future and an SVP in the Ipsos Strategy 3 Trends and Foresight team. I will be your host today. And I want to start by debuting something cool. If you go to future.ipsos.com and visit the wellness issue online, you can now download the full tabs of our wellness survey, including all the banners, for free. We hope you find a ton of value in this. And that said, let's talk the future of wellness. Imagine it's 2034 and America has lost its collective weight. This is different than now, where it seems like America has lost its collective mind. It's not because we learned anything new exactly, but because we learned how to apply what we know and treat diseases, not as personal failings. The last time I presented to you about wellness, I used my favorite word, bifurcation. And I talked about the good and bad trends. Like today, half of Americans say they're in excellent or great health. But we also know there are epidemics of serious health conditions like obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and hypertension. So what do we do? Ditch the carbs and sugars, eat lean proteins and veggies, and exercise. This was the advice given to those who picked up the first issue of Reader's Digest more than a century ago. Sounds just like what your doctor told you at your last physical, doesn't it? But it's worth noting that around that same period, many still considered cocaine a universal panacea, and leeches had just finally fallen out of flavor. So we've learned some additional things along the way. Today, technology has overtaken every aspect of our lives and vastly improved what we know about health and wellness. We have many more ways of preventing and treating disease. We have earlier disease detection. We can monitor vital signs in real time and use artificial intelligence to determine patterns and predict what will happen if we eat that burger or if we don't exercise after. And then there are the GLP-1 drugs, but we'll get to that in a bit. Yet, as Buddy Morris, one of the training staff for the NFL's Arizona Cardinals, says, the basics are the basics for a reason. He's talking about fitness and exercise, but wow, that line applies to a lot of things. Or take Maddie Dykewald, the author of the forthcoming Ageless Aging, a women's guide to increasing health span, brain span, and lifespan. She paints a simple picture of wellness to help you live longer and healthier. Eat well, and mostly plants, get enough sleep and water, and exercise with a shifting focus as you get older. For instance, since so many injuries in older people are caused by falls, balance is a critical focus of fitness as we age. Mental health and wellness is something we're still learning about, but it's increasingly clear that there's a direct tie to our physical health. Keeping our mental health strong as we age is another focus for Dykewald. She says, there are things that we don't think about at all as the time related to living longer life, like having a sense of purpose. She told me studies have shown a direct link between having a sense of purpose and living longer. That's pretty dramatic. A sense of purpose doesn't have to be something big, she says. Much that we know about health is within our control, but a lot isn't, such as the mess that is the U.S. health insurance system. The biggest worries Americans have about their health are access and affordability. Those who are employed, therefore, are twice much more likely to be insured, and therefore to say they are in good health, than those who aren't working. The problem isn't that we don't know what it takes to be healthy. The problem is the world around us makes it so much easier to be unhealthy. It's easier not to go to the doctor and deal with waiting rooms and paperwork and cost. It's easier to eat the cheap and abundant carbs around us. It's easier to scroll your phone or drive than walk and exercise. That's why we have these trends toward being vegetarian or working out or improving mental health. But simultaneously, we have those epidemics of diabetes, obesity, and heart disease. And America's use of GLP-1 drugs is, among other things, floating the entire economy of Denmark based on sales by the Danish biomed firm Novo Nordisk, maker of Ozempic and Wegovy. That's not an exaggeration. We know how to live healthy. We now have a greater understanding of how to control weight and reduce obesity as a disease, rather than as a lifestyle choice. We have medications to help with that, and technology to help us monitor, measure, and nudge ourselves to better choices. So let's go back to our initial prompt about what if America lost its weight. You'd see a future with less reliance on healthcare system to help us deal with all the related conditions like diabetes and heart disease. Conditions that draw an enormous cost on our lives, but also our care system. Americans are worried that costs will get higher and won't improve access. And that's one reason 1 in 3 people are using various services like GoodRx to save on prescription costs. But what if we never gained weight in the first place? That's an even more provocative question, isn't it? And it came up when Kate MacArthur, What the Future's managing editor, talked to Dr. Spencer Nadolsky, the medical director from Weight Watchers. Will more widespread use of weight loss medications and other tools and technologies, including genetics, keep us from gaining weight in the first place? Can we prevent obesity? Because it's usually easier to prevent something than to walk it back or break a cycle later. But what if there's also a demographic shift in the future? Already we have big shifts on the younger end of the spectrum. Over decades, we've seen conjoined and compounded trends. More of us are getting a college education. We're getting married later in life. We're having kids later in life, well into our 30s and 40s. We're also having fewer kids early in life as teen pregnancies have plummeted, and we're having fewer kids overall. That has led essentially to an entire new life stage of being a 20-something. Not all do it by choice, sure. The economics of being young and single are not great for many. Hence, there are about 3 in 10 people that age range living with their parents. But many also enjoy having a few years to be young and single. Now, say we live longer and our lifespans continue to grow after a brief pandemic blip. And say all these trends and technologies continue to allow us to live longer, healthier. The retirement age will likely go up. Many of us will find a future with a much longer period of employment and retirement. So could that develop into an entirely new, or at least improved and prolonged life stage? And what would that look like? All these shifts have profound implications for financial services as the math on how we afford retirement shifts. We're not doing a great job as a nation at saving for retirement, and Social Security is teetering. Health and pharmaceutical, as many of the medications that prolong our health span, like GLP-1s and statins, are lifetime medications. For food manufacturers, as appetites and diets shift. And customer experiences, as we think about the needs of a broad range of mostly healthy consumers. Or for any employer, as we come to terms with an aging and smaller workforce. So in today's program, we're going to talk a lot about the future of health and wellness, and we have a great panel of experts to do so with. Let's get into it, shall we? In today's program, we talk to Dr. Spencer Nadolsky, Medical Director at Weight Watchers, Nushin Hashemi, the founder and CEO of January AI, Dr. Noura Abul-Hosn, the Vice President of Genomic Health at 23andMe, Buddy Morris, Senior Reconditioning Coordinator for the NFL's Cardinals, and Lena Walker, Senior Vice President for Global Thought Leadership at AARP. Clearly, wellness is a big topic, and even as we just scratch the surface, we find no shortage of big questions to guide our thinking, and yes, our research. But despite our present, there's a lot of reason to be hopeful about in this future. So let's dive in. When we think about the future, we think about the macro forces, the signals we see in the shifts in society, markets, and people. When it comes to the future of wellness, we're thinking about shifts related to climate change, which poses a significant threat to global wellness through a range of complex and interconnected effects. Like a blend of changing weather patterns paired with biodiversity loss could increase our risk of spreading infectious diseases and more frequent epidemics and pandemics. We're thinking about the escalating costs of healthcare that could continue to negatively influence wellness by making treatment inaccessible for many, increasing stress, and leaving populations with untreated illnesses that they are attempting to manage on their own. And we're thinking about personalized medicine. While still in its infancy, personalized medicine, considering factors like genetic, ethnicity, and broader health context of the individual, may unlock growth and better outcomes. The ability to offer more targeted, effective therapies can reduce costly and potentially harmful trial and error treatment. And artificial intelligence may accelerate all of this. So we've got a fantastic panel today, and we're going to start with Weight Watchers. Weight Watchers has long been lauded as one of the most effective diet programs, but in 2023, the company pivoted from its focus on behavior modification programs to add clinical support as new prescription weight loss drugs surged in sales. Through its Weight Watchers clinic, eligible members can receive these prescriptions in conjunction with customized behavior and nutrition programs. Dr. Spencer Nadolsky, Weight Watchers' medical director, explains the shift and what it means for the future. He talked with managing editor Kate MacArthur about the shifts he sees, not just in terms of new medication, but in the mindset of people too. Here's what he told her.
Most used to and still think of obesity as a willpower and a discipline issue. And I think with these drugs, it shows that there's a much stronger biological underpinning of obesity than was thought. And many scientists and researchers have known this for quite a while, but now the public is starting to understand. So I think the paradigm shift is going from obesity as an issue of gluttony and sloth to an issue of biology. My biggest question is whether we're going to have an impact on our environment and getting to the crux of these drugs and talking about these drugs, or if we're just going to focus on drugs alone. Because I think we need to do both of them in order to be successful. I don't think we're going to drug our way out of this situation. Having said that, I do think the drugs are extremely powerful and part of the solution.
Weight loss medications like GLP-1s have demonstrated unprecedented success in suppressing users' appetites. But new research from Ipsos confirms that these medications also affect users' choice of foods. This could reorient the grocery shopping and spending preferences, which would have a considerable impact on CPG brands and retailers' bottom lines, says Rhonda Schmucking, president of Ipsos Global Therapy Monitors. Despite the buzz, use of anti-obesity drugs is currently limited. It remains to be seen whether these treatments will become mainstream or how fast that change could come. But according to a syndicated Ipsos survey of users' consumption behavior, weight loss drugs may already be driving increases in certain purchase categories and drops in others. In a future with widespread adoption, some brands could experience newfound brand benefits or roles, while others would need to adapt and innovate for new preferences, or manage diminished demand. These complexities raise the need for attentive consumer research and fast-moving product developments to ensure that retail offerings remain in step with America's shifting needs. When we used to talk about health wearables, we were often talking about, like, step trackers. These devices and their applications have become a long ways since then, with better connectivity, a wider array of sensors, and the use of AI. January AI is an app that works on its own or paired with a continuous blood glucose monitor, a CGM, to help people understand how diet and exercise impact their metabolic levels. It's currently used by both people with diabetes and elite athletes. Talk about bifurcation. But CEO Nushin Hashemi notes that a large percentage of people with diabetes and prediabetes are undiagnosed. And she says there's a lengthy lag between what we know in a lab about what makes for a good test for these conditions and what becomes the standard of care, and that apps like this will help more people avoid future problems and need treatment. She told me these technologies are now able to be used by a variety of people for a variety of reasons, and she wishes they were more prevalent. She says, I wish 100 million people could throw on a CGM, but it's too expensive. And of course, there are dangers. There are healthy ways to keep an eye on your metabolisms, and less so. January AI uses terms like metabolic health and lifestyle-related diseases, but not obesity or diet. And here's what she told me, including that nomenclature matters.
We feel that there is a huge stigma in this society around type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes, people feel that there's a greater understanding, greater empathy because people are born with that condition. But there seems to be a huge stigma around type 2 diabetes, meaning like if you have type 2 diabetes, then it's your fault, which is a horrible thing. People are prone to marketing, and that's the issue. I think some companies have marketed themselves irresponsibly. So people who are saying, use a CGM and lose weight, is it possible? Sure. Yeah. If I force you, to never have a spike over 110, you will lose weight because I'm forcing you to eat no carbs, basically. But is that healthy? That is a terrible idea. It is an absolute terrible idea. And people have done that. Marketing is a real problem. If people take something out of context, use it for something that wasn't meant to be used, per se.
Shemi's discussion of empathy and stigma are a good segue to talk about one of the big trends in healthcare, a more holistic understanding of the ties between mental and physical wellness. Americans of all ages grapple with mental health struggles, and nearly half of all respondents to a recent Ipsos community survey rated their own mental health as less than positive. But the issues in question and their impact vary by generation, says Amy Cargill, a senior director at Ipsos. For example, consider the complex relationship between technology and mental health. Ipsos has found that while most baby boomers believe tech has a neutral impact on their well-being, 1 in 3 millennials think it has harmed their mental health. Yet 2 in 3 who've used technology as a mental health resource find it's beneficial. Brands can't address or access every mental health issue, but whether they want to develop products and services that resonate with all ages, or simply want to avoid alienating certain audiences, a nuanced and intergenerational understanding of how factors in mental health vary across generations is critical to making people feel seen. And I think when we talk about tech and mental wellness, we're often talking about social media, but many technologies are playing a positive role for our physical well-being too. We just talked about wearables and AI, but that's just one. When the first direct-to-consumer DNA tests for tracing our ancestry hit the market in 2007, it also blew open the genomic health field. Testing has expanded to identify genetic health risks and optimize wellness. The next frontier is to create drugs and other treatment to restore health and even prevent disease. Internist and medical geneticist Noura Abul-Husn is vice president of genomic health at the consumer genetics company 23andMe. When she thinks about the future, she hopes that genetics will expand into all areas of medicine. She sees a future where all of the things we were just talking about in terms of wearables and sensors and AI combine with knowledge of your genetics, not just to treat or screen or test for illness, but to optimize health. She says the future of health is to bring all types of data from your genes, your wearables, your continuous monitoring into real life, bring AI into the picture, and make sure everyone is optimizing their health in a very personalized way. Here's what she told Kate.
In addition to understanding these single gene variants are often rare, but that have clear association with disease, we have those kinds of tests. They're well established. We know how to use them. Now we have a different kind of test that can also give us information about much more common diseases and take all of that information and collapse it into a score. And what it does is it puts people on this bell curve of likelihood for a disease, and then you can use that score to look at each individual and see where they are on that spectrum. If you do this across populations, you now capture a much larger proportion of the population that has risk for common diseases like heart disease and diabetes and kidney disease. It puts genetics and genetic screening into the realm of primary care medicine, where your frontline for medicine, where you're thinking about your health, you go for your wellness checkups, your routine labs, and sometimes, hopefully, many people are asked about their family history for disease, and that gets taken into consideration.
This kind of information is what she calls an opportunity for shared decision-making between a patient and physician to understand their real risk factors. So far, we've talked about a lot of different technology. And technology is very much in use when it comes to training and fitness, but it's not the only thing. Buddy Morris, at 66, has trained some of the world's most elite athletes for more than 40 years. It's not all physical, nor is it all complex. Morris spends his day pondering how to keep his team at the top of their game, but for all the tech and tools available, he's a big fan of the Nord board, it all comes back to the basics, and that's just as true for you as it is for his offensive line. He said the basics are the basics for a reason. If you want to get stronger, put more weight on the bar. If you want to get faster, run sprints. But don't mistake that for him being old-fashioned. We talked a lot about mental health and stress and stressors, not just fitness himself. I asked Morris, who trained a collegiate Dan Marino in the early 80s, if he was talking about that kind of stuff at the start of his career. He told me Buddy Morris today would fire the Buddy Morris of back in the day. And while they use a lot of technology to measure and monitor in his work, he's concerned about another kind of tech. He's worried that social media is having a bad impact on our understanding of fitness. Here's what he told me when we chatted.
People need to understand that the more advanced or the more elite the athlete becomes, the more general work transfers. So the programs we write are very general. The basics are the basics for a reason, Matt, because they work. Unfortunately, social media has ruined everything in this country anymore, and you can quote me on that, but we are a very gimmick-oriented culture. We always look for the latest, greatest, never seen before, top secret, double probation, exercise, supplementation, pill, diet, or pharmaceutical drug that is going to transform us overnight into being some fat slob to Superman. And if you still want to eat cheeseburgers and drink beer, don't expect to have a great transformation. The three things, the most basic of all basic things still comes down to sleep, hydration, and nutrition. The problem with those three things is they're not expensive. Nutrition can be expensive, but they're not sexy.
The accessibility, flexibility, and convenience of telehealth has made it a fast-growing field, from video chat-based therapy to virtual urgent care. But if the drawbacks and frustration of online services and platforms go unaddressed, then these platforms' potential will be limited in healthcare and beyond, says Janet Creaser, a senior vice president in Ipsos's user experience practice. In the early days of the pandemic, telehealth had to work, so it did. In time, virtual care became many Americans' preferred way to seek care, improving and expanding perceptions of all sorts of online services. But today, patients have a plethora of digital platforms to choose from, and the option of in-person visits, which all amount to higher expectation for online experiences. Of course, this goes beyond medicine. More of Americans' lives are taking place online and seeking care to shopping and socializing. In many cases, the only way people will interact with a brand is through a screen, or even through AI-powered triage chatbots. That means functional, accessible UX isn't just a nice-to-have, but critical. By simplifying web interfaces and addressing users' frustrations, healthcare providers and brands in other industries can make their online offerings more useful and boost brand affinity. On the consumer side, one step many people take to manage their wellness is taking supplements. But there's essentially a UX issue here, too. The vast majority of nutritional supplement users believe that the supplements are integral to their health, according to an Ipsos study conducted for the Council for Responsible Nutrition. Yet, just more than half say they're regular users, and confusing information could be why. Whether they're aging, health-conscious, or both, more Americans feel they can live better by eating, drinking, and consuming better, from multivitamin tablets to bioactive superfoods, says Chad Nielsen, a VP in the Ipsos online community team. The breadth and persistence of these trends suggests a long-term shift in consumer priorities, with consequences for CPG brands and beyond. But this opportunity is complicated by the proliferation of new products and the lack of clear information. A recent Ipsos online community survey indicated that nutritional supplement users and potential users alike are looking for guidance on efficacy, safety, and recommended usage. Brands can solve this problem by informing and building trust with both groups beyond just sales messages. We talked earlier about 2 new life stages, and the average American will live to 77.5 years, according to the CDC. That's the same age as Cher or Donald Trump, but decades away from Betty White's 99 birthdays. With a respectable ripe age, about a dozen of our years are likely to be healthy ones. That can lead to financial strains as retirement plausibly becomes a longer life stage for many. But we can do a lot to afford a healthier longevity, and it's not just about having money, says Lena Walker, a Senior Vice President for Global Thought Leadership at AARP. Here's how and who can help us get there. She said people need social connections and mental stimulation, and you need all of those elements together to lead a healthy longevity. Many of those elements don't have to cost much, she says, but there's a lot more to health than what we eat. This wasn't in the Reader's Digest 100 years ago. Where you live matters too. Here's what Walker told Kate about the importance of geography.
We need to think about the built environment differently. We need to think about things like sidewalks and traffic lights, making sure that they're safe so that people can age and move around in the community safely. So simple things like making sure that they have enough time to cross the streets, making sure that there are curb cuts so that walkers and wheelchairs and like multi-generational families can use the space. Housing can be different. So AARP has done a lot of work on supporting ADUs, accessory dwelling units. We need to think about how we live, how we work, and how we connect with each other differently in a world where everybody's going to be living longer. People need meaning and purpose in their lives. People need social connections, and people need mental stimulation. And you need all those elements together to lead a healthy longevity.
She says everyone has a role to play, from cities to governments to business to citizen. And that's true for our collective health as well as for our individual wellness. We are living longer, and we want to be healthy for as much of that as we can. Which brings me back to a point that Maddie Dykewald made, and gets us back into the idea that there's a growing post-work life stage. We need purpose. We need to think about how we age in terms of our mental, physical, and even financial wellness. Most older Americans outlive their ability to drive by 5 or 10 years. So what does that look like in our built environment? And how do we stay healthy and well in all stages of our life? And that brings us to our tensions. When we think about the future, we think about it in other ways, among other ways, in terms of the tensions that we face as people and the tensions we see in society. And those are things we can measure now, and they're things that we can measure in the future and see how things have changed. So today, we're often forced to make trade-offs between our health, our time, and our budgets. Tensions within and between polarized governments, such as between state and federal, abound. There are even battles between science and not science. So what could the world look like as we consider the choices we make and other choices that are made for us? We think about this in a classic 2x2 grid using two different tension lines. The dot shows where we are today based on our Future of Wellness survey. And if today's future continues, people in this future will continue to be vocal about keeping government out of their healthcare choices and push politicians to listen to that desire. Sure, there's always the question of, will they listen? And history has shown us the answer is often no. But this tension will then continue to play out in courts, voting booths, and drugstores. But what if it shifts across the axis to prioritizing time and convenience? In this future, healthcare is expensive for everyone, but concierge medicine thrives, empowered further by wearables and AI. People with the means have even more great care on demand than they already do. The rest fall further behind, and health disparities grow. Tension 2 is about equal care versus willpower. And recently, we've seen an explosion in new drugs to manage diabetes and, in growing cases, weight. As we've been saying, it's leading to a greater understanding of weight loss, both by the public and the industry. Thinking about it as a disease instead of people being lazy or lacking willpower could lead us to very different futures for care and treatment. But we still have the broken US healthcare system to contend with. Our baseline is on the bubble. We totally think everyone should have access to healthcare. But we're still leaning toward obesity being something that is based on willpower. And if that continues, we could see a world where obese people struggle to find support in the health system. But if today's momentum continues shifting to an understanding that obesity is a disease, we might see more and more people adopting these new medications. Obesity rates might finally start to decline, as well as a host of related conditions. Life expectancy ticks up, retirement lasts longer, healthcare costs drop systematically, and all of this has implications for food manufacturing and a wide range of sectors. And the last piece of our puzzle is the future jobs to be done, where Ipsos spins the traditional jobs to be done framework forward with future jobs to be done. And this builds on the theory that people buy products and services to fulfill certain needs or accomplish specific tasks. For example, we don't download a mental health app or just to own another app. We hire it to improve how we feel and navigate our lives. That's its job. So thinking about futures we've been talking about, the future jobs to be done could include helping me to actualize my right to equitable healthcare, helping me to afford equitable healthcare, helping educate me about all natural, medicinal, and/or surgical alternatives from which I can choose to address my healthcare needs, helping me to effectively treat my systemic needs rather than just my localized symptoms. And we can imagine a world where all citizens have a right to welfare was embraced rather than attacked. So we always ask, why do we do this? And this is kind of the point we'd like to end on, that when we think about tomorrow, when we put ourselves into the future, 3 years, 5 years, 10, when we start to imagine the world around us and our consumers, people who buy our products and services, you can start to imagine the kind of products you're going to need to innovate in order to get to the future you want. Start thinking about the user experience in that world and the customer experience in that world. Start thinking about the messaging that it will take to develop these products and get them into the world. And so in short, when you imagine possible tomorrows, you ask better questions today. And another great piece of that puzzle about being able to think about the future is having great data. And so once again, I would urge you to go to future.ipsos.com, where you can now download the full tabs for our Future of Wellness survey and for every issue going forward. You can sign up to subscribe to our free monthly newsletter, where we'll drop each new issue of What the Future. And coming up soon is our next issue on the future of risk. And we're looking at geopolitical risk for brands and for companies and for people. We're looking at health risks. We're looking at financial risks. We're looking at how we prepare for risks, and even talking about the personal risks we're willing to take for our own amusement in the adrenaline economy. It's going to be a fantastic issue, and I look forward to getting it in your hands. So thanks again, everybody. Once again, my name is Matt Carmichael. I'm the editor of What the Future. And I look forward to seeing you when we do our next webinar next month. And I'll see you in the future.